What's going on, everybody? Cleepus Tech here, coming back at you with another video. In this video, we're going to be doing a quick comparison between the BLU F92e 5G and the Samsung Galaxy A23 5G. Now, as always, if you do end up wanting to learn more about either phone individually, definitely check out the description, where I am linking to several other videos about them, as well as some information about pricing, availability, and some of my favorite smartphone accessories. But with that being said, let's get into it. So with the BLU F92e 5G, we're getting a 6.5-inch IPS LCD display with a 720p resolution, a PPI of 270, and a 20:9 aspect ratio. With the Samsung Galaxy A23 5G, we're getting a 6.6-inch 120Hz PLS LCD display. This phone has a 1080p resolution, a PPI of 400, and a 20:9 aspect ratio as well. So on one hand, with the F92e 5G, the display is definitely not bad for what it is. If you're doing more basic activities like web browsing, social media, and maybe even watching the occasional video every now and then, the display is large enough to give you a good experience. It has a nice tall and narrow form factor, and in general, despite only having a 720p resolution, things do look at least decent. So overall, for more light use, the BLU F92e 5G is going to be perfectly fine. That being said though, with the Samsung Galaxy A23 5G, the image quality is quite a bit better. With a 1080p resolution, things on the Samsung are going to be quite a bit sharper. So if you're doing a lot of content consumption like watching videos for example, where the image quality is a bit more important, then for that kind of use, I would definitely go with the A23 5G because even though the BLU F92e 5G is definitely not bad, having a 1080p resolution is definitely going to make a difference. In addition to this, with a 120Hz refresh rate versus 60Hz with the BLU F92e 5G, the movement on the screen with the A23 5G is going to be a bit faster and smoother, making the phone feel more premium in general. So the bottom line here is, on one hand, the BLU F92e 5G definitely does have a pretty decent display, but if you really want a nice display, especially if you're consuming a lot of content, the Samsung Galaxy A23 5G is definitely the better choice here. Now for storage, with the BLU F92e 5G, we're getting 128GB of internal storage with microSD card expansion, and with the Samsung Galaxy A23 5G, we're getting 64GB with microSD card expansion as well. So on one hand here, 64GB is definitely at least acceptable for the average user as long as you're not downloading a bunch of games and apps and stuff like that. You should be at least okay, especially if you use a microSD card. But with the BLU F92e 5G, this phone does have double the storage, so if that is more of a priority for you, the F92e 5G will definitely be a better choice. For security features, both phones have Face Unlock, and they both have fingerprint scanners right here on the power keys, so definitely a great spot. But starting with the BLU F92e 5G, let's give them a try. There we go, one more time. And there we go. And now for the A23 5G. There we go, one more time. And there we go. So as you can see, both fingerprint scanners are real fast and responsive, no issues at all. And again, remember, both phones have Face Unlock too, so if you want to use that instead, you always can. Now for the camera setups here, with the BLU F92e 5G. Up front, we got a 13 megapixel selfie camera, then on the back, we got a triple camera setup with a 50 megapixel main camera, a 2 megapixel macro camera, and a 0.3 megapixel depth sensing camera. With the Samsung Galaxy A23 5G, up front, we got an 8 megapixel selfie camera, then on the back, we got a quad camera setup with the 50 megapixel main camera, a 5 megapixel ultra wide camera, a 2 megapixel macro camera, and a 2 megapixel depth sensing camera. So as far as features go, both phones have pretty good camera setups here, but I would say in general, the Samsung Galaxy A23 5G is a bit better. Again, this phone does have an ultra-wide camera, whereas with the BLU F92e 5G, although technically, according to BLU's website at least, this phone is supposed to have an ultra-wide camera. In the camera app, I can't find it anywhere. In any phone I've ever used that has an ultra-wide camera, all you have to do to activate it is press this right here, or sometimes there's a dedicated button, but either way, it's supposed to be right there, but as you can see, that's not the case with this phone. Whereas if we go to the Samsung Galaxy A23 5G, as you can see right there, there's a 0.5x. If we hit this, now we can fit a lot more into the frame. So in general, if you do want to get those wider angle photos, the A23 5G will have an advantage. And overall, I feel like even though both phones do take really good photos, considering they are more entry-level devices, the photo quality with the Samsung Galaxy A23 5G is a bit better. So overall, if the camera is really more of a priority for you, then I would definitely go with the Samsung. Now to give you an idea of what they can do, first, here's some pictures taken with the BLU F92e 5G. Overall, definitely great quality here. Sure, on one hand, compared to a much more expensive phone, it's obviously not nearly as good, but from pretty much everything people normally use smartphone cameras for, stuff like Instagram, Snapchat, sending photos to family and friends and stuff like that, this camera will get the job done, and it really just goes to show that if you want to take nice photos, you don't have to spend $1,000 on a super high-end phone, or even $500 for that matter. You can get this phone that's like $150 or less, and although it's not really the most amazing quality, it will at least get the job done. And then here's some pictures taken with the Samsung Galaxy A23 5G. same kind of thing, but I feel like the quality here is a bit better. And on one hand, do you really need it to be that much better for stuff like Instagram? Probably not, but if you are more into taking photos and stuff like that, then you're probably gonna like the A23 5G a bit better because of this. And then for video, keep in mind, the BLU F92e 5G does have a max recording quality of 2K in the rear camera, and then 1080p in the front. Whereas with the Samsung Galaxy A23 5G, this phone does max out at 1080p in both the rear and front cameras. So if you do like to record 2K videos, which I don't know how many people actually do, but if you do, then the BLU F92e 5G will have an advantage. Now when it comes to RAM and processor, with the BLU F92e 5G, we're getting 4GB of RAM with the MediaTek Dimensity 700 processor. With the Samsung Galaxy A23 5G, this phone is also getting 4GB of RAM with the Qualcomm Snapdragon 695 5G processor. In general, when it comes to overall performance, both phones are pretty good for more moderate activities like web browsing, social media, watching videos, and some light mobile gaming. But in my experience, the Samsung Galaxy A23 5G is a bit faster, not by really a whole lot, but it definitely still is noticeable. So if you are going to be on your phone a bit more, then you will get a nicer, smoother experience with the Samsung Galaxy A23 5G. Now I did run benchmark tests on both phones using Geekbench 5. And here are the results I got. So again, as you can see here, the Samsung Galaxy A23 5G does have a bit of an advantage. It's not really going to be like a night and day kind of difference, but it still definitely is at least worth considering, especially if you're going to be on your phone a lot. I mean, neither of these phones is really super fast, especially compared to a much more expensive device. But all the same, the Samsung is clearly the faster phone between the two. But again, with the BLU F92e 5G, despite this not being quite as fast, for more basic activities, it will get the job done. And in my experience, I haven't had any performance issues with it. Now for the battery, both phones have 5000 mAh batteries, with the BLU F92e 5G supporting 10W fast charging, and the Samsung Galaxy A23 5G supporting 25. So when it comes to charging speeds, clearly here, the Samsung Galaxy A23 5G will charge a bit faster. It's really not an insane difference, but I will say, with the A23 5G, the fast charging actually feels kind of like fast charging, whereas with the BLU F92e 5G, it still does charge decently fast, I guess. But yeah, definitely not as fast. Aside from that though, the batteries are essentially the same. With 5000 mAh batteries, both phones are going to get great battery life. So if that is a priority for you, then either phone is going to be a really good choice. Now for the software, with the BLU F92e 5G, this phone does currently have Android 12, which is not bad, but at the same time, at this point in 2023, it would be nice to actually get Android 13. But with the Samsung Galaxy A23 5G, we actually are getting Android 13, and with Samsung software support, you can also expect to get several other major updates in the future. Since this phone originally came with Android 12, I believe it's going to be getting Android 14, 15, and 16, whereas with the BLU F92e 5G, I would honestly be surprised if this phone even gets Android 13. So if the software is important to you, I would definitely go with the A23 5G. But of course, if you're not really that concerned about it, just keep in mind Android 12 really isn't that bad, especially considering in this price range at least, most non-Samsung phones have Android 12 too. So even though it's disappointing the BLU F92e 5G doesn't have Android 13, at this point, it's still definitely not unusual. Something else to keep in mind here is that with the Samsung Galaxy A23 5G, this phone does have NFC, whereas unfortunately, the BLU F92e 5G does not. So if you like to use tap and pay, then you are going to want to go with the Samsung Galaxy A23 5G. But in conclusion, which of these phones is better? In general, the Samsung Galaxy A23 5G does have most of the advantages. Despite the displays being similar when it comes to size and dimensions, the A23 5G with a 1080p resolution has a much nicer looking image. So if you're watching a lot of videos, for example, this is definitely going to make a difference. It also has a nicer camera setup that takes better photos. It also has slightly better fast charging, noticeably better performance, better software support, and NFC. On the other hand though, the BLU F92e 5G is still not a bad phone, especially for more basic activities, and it does have double the storage with 128GB versus again 64 with the A23 5G. So in general, if the storage is really a main priority for you, you might want to go with the BLU F92e 5G, but for everything else, you will get a better experience with the A23 5G. Now once again, if you do want to learn more about either phone individually, definitely check out the description, where I am linking to several other videos about them, as well as some information about pricing, availability, and some of my favorite smartphone accessories. But that's it for this video. If you enjoyed it and found it useful, be sure to give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button. Don't forget to follow Kalipis Tech on Twitter and Instagram. And as always, I will see you in the next video.